Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. We have a different kind of guest with us today. We have a gentleman, Robert Althuis. Great to have you joining us. So thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you, and I'm really grateful that I've been invited in the women's circle today.
There you
so
go.
I really do appreciate that. It's actually something that's very, very dear to my heart. I do believe that there's a big need for more feminine energy in this world, and obviously women are the fractal embodiment of the feminine energy. And so I'm a big proponent of that, and throughout my work I try to awaken this both in men and women, actually.
Yes.
Because that's been very unbalanced throughout history for a very long time.
Absolutely. Well, I love that you said that because we're going to talk a lot about that today. I happen to also be a big proponent for feminine and masculine energy and how do we harmonize it. But before we go there, let me just welcome our audience. Thank you so much for being here. We know you have a choice as to what podcast you listen to, and we're super grateful that you're here with us today. We're now being listened to in 48 countries, and we don't take that for granted. We know how important that is to share the messages that our guests come on board to share with you. So thank you for being here. So Robert, real estate investment, GE Capital, you spent a lot of time in the corporate world. You're a partner in Keen, which is a food and beverage company. You're a change maker, an author. You've got, two exciting books, Never Enoughitis, your first one, and then Love and Truth, which is the one that I've had an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with. So tell us about your story. So how did we make this transition from corporate into spiritual guru?
Well, and I don't allow people to call me a guru because everybody's their own teacher. But let's start by the start. I mean, I was born in Holland. I was 21 when I left. I went on a bit of a journey around the world. And about 25, I got serious about pursuing kind of the American dream. I landed in Atlanta at the time. I went to night school. I got into real estate. And I was pretty good at all this stuff. So I got rewarded for it. And then I went to Columbia Business School. And then I got picked up by GE Capital. And I did big deals all over the world. And I did pretty well there, too. And then around the financial crisis, I bought out an asset from GE, and that's how I got into business for myself, building airports and airport infrastructure around the world, and working with pension funds and private equity and big, international players and all that stuff, and all the stuff that the world will applaud you for and say, he's so successful, he's making a lot of money, he's very powerful, he's very influential, in my own little way, and to some extent, the worldly success was definitely there. But I sold my soul. I roamed in the very highest regions of this business echelon, and there's a lot of stuff that happens there that can't really stomach the daylight. And I was a part of that machinery. And so when I sold a big part of my business in 2015. I reached this proverbial mountain peak. I was in my early 40s. I had a lot of money. I had a beautiful house in an oceanfront community. I had the perfect wife, perfect kids, perfect toys, perfect cars, perfect everything. Yet I was completely empty on the inside. I had this massive void, and I felt disillusioned because for 20 plus 25 years, I pursued all this. And I was told by the world that if I get there, then I'll be complete, then I'll be happy, then I'll be fulfilled. And I wasn't. And so the story fell apart. And I really didn't know what to do with it. Now, in hindsight, I can now tell you that I had a profound spiritual awakening. My claircognizance and clairsentience came online. So now I start feeling all this stuff. I start seeing all these things, and I had no idea what was going on, but it made no sense to me. Except my mom was an astrologist, and she had actually planted some spiritual seeds in my teens when she was going for her awakening. And so I did have something to hold on to. And I started on this journey, this inward journey, and the universe started stripping away all these, carefully curated accumulations in the outside world.
Yeah.
So slowly but surely, my marriage came apart. Slowly but surely, my business came apart. My balance sheet. I ended up buying a deal out of hubris that got wiped out by a hurricane. And now I found myself on the edge of bankruptcy, and I found myself in financial trouble with a guarantee to a bank, and we couldn't get permits to rebuild it. And I had shareholders that, were obviously complaining about their losses. And so my whole life fell apart. And it's what I call the divine gift wrapped in sandpaper. Because by the universe stripping all of that away, I was left just with me. And I went on this journey of knowing thyself, and I went deep into spirituality, deep into philosophy. And, through that journey, I came to the conclusion that, kind of what the world tells you to do is a false story. Those are the finite games. Those are the games man play. And nothing wrong per se with those games, but that's not really the game that is going on at all times, which is the infinite game, or the game spirit plays. And so I started learning, well, what are the rules spirit plays by? And these are very, very different than what man plays by. And so, that's a short story, and in Never Enoughitis, I kind of described that whole arc of all of it, the building and creation of it, and all of it coming apart, and then what helped me kind of get out of that. And Love and Truth is more spiritual teaching framework that I channeled last year. It's a very profound work. I'm very, not so much proud of it, but I'm very grateful that it came through me. It's something that I resonate with very deeply. And it's a beautiful message, and very timely message in the world, because the world is a bit of a mess. And
that it is.
we humans have created this mess by basically having a misperception or a misunderstanding of what life is all about. And this is really what I try to bring forth in this book about love and truth. We have to get to the truth of that, and we have to get to the essence of everything, which is love. But this is a journey.
That's it. Well, I was going to say that's an individual and a collective journey, right? It starts with individual to what you were just describing, because you had a choice in how you took the situation of having everything, then normal world looks at it as then having nothing, but that's not what you experienced. That was actually the true beginning of you. It's what it sounds like. Did I capture that correctly?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the true me was always there, but yeah, you're absolutely right. And we always have a choice, but there's also such a thing as, I end a lot of my things by saying, once you see, you cannot unsee.
Yes, exactly.
And one of the true principles of life is that we are actually innocent until we do see it. And then it becomes ignorance if we don't follow and live according to it. And the universe has a way, and the universe, when I use the word universe, you can substitute that with God, Creator, Great Spirit, Yahweh, Allah, Brahman, infinite intelligence, universal, the all. It doesn't matter. There's hundreds of labels that you can call that which is greater than all of us, right? And that which is greater than all of us has a way of guiding us, because we are fractal of that. And we're an individualized fractal and a human avatar, and we go on this journey of learning and experiencing, and it's beautiful, and it's messy too. We make
that it can be, yes.
We make poor decisions. We get caught up in belief systems and ideas and ideologies and dogmas, and then we bump into the wall, so to speak. It's like a bowling lane, right? I mean, when you kind of bump into the sidewalls, when you bump into them hard enough, at some point you're like, well, why am I bumping into these walls? What is this?
What am I supposed to learn here?
And really, the universe is just cracking us open. The universe is actually experiencing through us. And you and I are going to have a very different view of that, because your life has been different. You had different parents, a different upbringing. You are, happen to be in this lifetime in a female gender. I'm in a male gender. So you and I are going to look at life differently, experience it differently, but it's all beautiful. Because we're supposed to, all 8 billion of us are here to just accumulate this experience of life itself, and for consciousness to evolve and grow and expand. And this is really what this whole game is about. Now, once you kind of get to that truth, and that there's a part of me that's living through me. I'm not this human avatar. I'm this thing behind it that is observing who's seeing these thoughts? Who's witnessing these thoughts? Who's experiencing these emotions? Who is experiencing and living in this body, right? And once we start realizing that, it's like, I have some control over this.
Yeah.
I actually have some directive powers. I have creative powers, because once I step into that which is behind it, which is observing it, which is the awareness of all of it, now we can start looking at it like, okay, so if I make different decisions, if I think different things, if I say different things, if I take different actions, then this movie changes. This movie called my life.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And what you're describing is it's that shift, and maybe talk about that a little bit. It's that shift from being in your head space into your heart space, and trusting that you are hearing the right messages, that you are being guided.
Yeah. So I talk in my book, and I talk generally, and I teach this actually many times to mostly to men, because they're so disconnected from their heart. Now, if you think about our mind, we have a brain that's an organ, and that produces what's called a mind. And this mind is just thoughts, and it's actually not real, because they're just thoughts. They're electrical impulses, and they race through our head, and our awareness, witnesses these thoughts. Now, we can consider that our masculine intelligence. And it's actually quite limited. It's very logical. It's linear. It lives in the linear, world of time and space. And it's great for navigating through this, 3D earthly realm. And it's great to set a goal and then work towards it, and understand that we need to do steps X, Y, and Z to get to, that destination. It's wonderful at that. We need it. It's a beautiful form of intelligence, but it's also very limited, and it can't really get out of this linearity of the earthly realm. And this earthly realm actually lives in the non-linearity of space, ether, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. This nothingness that we see all around us is actually everything, right? And the linearity only plays out within that. And so this linearity has its own intelligence. Now, this is the heart, and the heart actually has 40,000 neurons, which we know from the Heart Math Institute. There's actually more data going from the heart to the mind than from the mind to the heart. And we call the heart actually our feminine intelligence. Now, that's not because, it's female in gender. It's really feminine in its characteristics. Now, what are the language of the heart? It's feeling, sensing, intuiting, and direct knowing. It's not logic, because it's supra-rational, which means it's rational, but beyond rational. Yeah. It can look around the corner. It can tap into this field of information, which in quantum physics we call the unified field, which we know is full of photons, and photons are information. All information of everything in this universe is in the universe. In fact, it's in your DNA, which is scientifically proven as well. You've got 13.8 billion years of memory in your DNA. That's the storage capacity of your DNA. But that's this feminine podcast. this heart is a portal. And it's a portal to this far grander intelligence that's called the entire universe. And so when we have a precognition, right, which results in a déjà vu, it's like we've already seen it.
Yeah.
We've already experienced it. And maybe it came through in a dream. Maybe it was just we were sitting in the car and a thought came in. And then some moment later, it's like, man, I've seen this scene in a movie before. Yeah. Because that scene already existed. Everything already exists. Every single possibility you could possibly think about already exists in the field, as they say.
Yeah.
And so a precognition is just you had a preview of something that was to come. Intuition is you're using your heart as a portal to tap into this wisdom, this information field, right? And it's guiding you, and it's maybe not likely non-linear, because maybe you cannot rationally explain why you have this hunch, why you have this sense that, I should not go to that party, or I should not take this job. Or maybe
that's your head talking.
Right. And so your head is trying to understand something that is non-linear in nature.
Exactly.
Now, the non-linearity, that part of intelligence is the entire universe. It's not bound by time and space. And so opening up our heart portal gives us access to this vast field of intelligence. And now the beauty comes in when we can make this heart the master, and then we use our mind to do those logical steps and to understand that, hey, I put my hand on the stove, I'm going to burn my hand. Your heart's intelligence is probably not going to tell you that, but your memory and your mind will remind you of that, right? And so there are certain ways that we can really utilize and bring forth the power of our masculine mind to help us with life here on the earthly realm. And then we have this beautiful heart portal, which is also guided by a far greater power than exists anywhere in this universe, and that's love. And what I describe in my book is that love is we misunderstand it, because most people think about love, and I call that love the emotion. Now, love the emotion has exclusivity and perishability, and I'll explain this to you. I love you today. I want to marry you. We have a wonderful time. And then somehow, for some reason, I want to get divorced, and I'm going to hire a pit bull lawyer. I'm going to go after you. That's love the emotion. It's perishable and it has exclusivity. I love my people, but I don't like those people. I love my country. I don't like that country. I love this car, my car, but I don't like that car. All of that is love the emotion. It's not necessarily bad. It's just to understand that that's love the emotion. It has a conditionality to it.
That's a great example.
As long as you do everything I want you to do, I'm going to love you.
Yeah.
As a friend, as a lover, as a parent, as a brother, as a sister, as long as you show up the way I want you to show up, I love you. You're my best friend. But God forbid you decide to do something that I don't like. And now that love, is like very quickly, and it actually doesn't turn into hate or anger or those things, but it turns into indifference. Yeah. The opposite of love, the emotion, is indifference. And this is what we see in the world today. And I don't want to get too deep into this, but when we see war and violence and atrocities and unthinkable acts towards other human beings, we are in a state of indifference. We can no longer see the humanity in them.
Yeah, you're so right. Oh my gosh. And that is like.
And so this is love the emotion. I love my people.
Yeah.
I love my country. I love my flag. And I'm sort of indifferent
to yours. Yeah.
To yours. Yeah. Now, love the energy. This is something different. Love the energy has no conditionality. And a lot of times, people call this unconditional love. I don't use that word because a lot of people confuse unconditional love with love the emotion. And so I think it's kind of cheapened. I love to call it love the energy. Now, love the energy is what we are at the very core essence, because love the energy has an intelligence to it. It has a consistency to it. It has a creative aspect to it. It has an animation aspect to it. Love the energy is actually to feel the consciousness that creates everything. Now, how do we know this? Because whenever we have an interaction with love the energy and unconditional love, it moves us to our core. When we do something, let's say that's wrong, there's nothing really wrong in life, but when we do something wrong and someone meets us in love the energy with compassion, man, it moves us inside. When someone can just receive us and all our flaws and all our horrible things or whatever we've done, right? And someone can meet us in love the energy, it moves us. This is the stuff of saints. This is when we look at people like, oh my God. And so love the energy can love Putin. Love the energy can love anybody.
Yeah.
Because it basically looks at the totality of everything.
Yeah.
And I'll give you this example to put it in a context. So, and I'm not advocating at all that Hitler was a great man, but I'm originally from Europe. And pre-World War II, there was war in Europe for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Right? And France and Germany and England and Spain, and everybody was fighting all the time for thousands of years. Now, post-World War II, today, the Ukraine Russia was the first war in that continental Europe in 80 years. But, it's inconceivable today that Germany and France will go to war. Inconceivable, right? We can all agree on that problem. So you could look at a man like Hitler and say, yeah, it was terrible. And the atrocities, it's unjustifiable. But then you can also see, well, maybe he was a catalyst for something that he created that came after him. And so when we start looking throughout history, we can look at the most awful people and say, well, in some way, they might have been a catalyst for something that is far grander than the atrocities they committed. I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying we are here because it's an evolutionary game.
Yeah, no, I love how you've described that. And, I agree. I hope our audience is not taking that as that you're, promoting that.
I'm not picking any sides. I'm not saying anything.
Exactly.
And I'll say about this Middle Eastern conflict, it's terrible. It's horrendous. It's heinous. There's no justification for any life because all life is sacred.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
exactly.
maybe as a collective, zooming out 30,000 feet, we can look at this and say, what as humanity do we need to learn from this?
Yes, no kidding.
What is here to learn? Because everything is an evolutionary step in humanity's progress.
Yeah.
And so clearly we cannot continue as humanity to have these types of conflicts.
Yeah.
To have these kinds of wars and violence erupt everywhere. Yeah. To have 1 billion people starving. To have, half the nations in Africa ruled by violent dictators. Yeah. And, everything is exactly the way it needs to be, but it's there for us to learn and grow and evolve. And so all of these situations are a catalyst for growth if we allow it to. And now in my personal life, my collapse of my life, my balance sheet, which at the surface of it is like, well, his life fell apart. This guy is like, he should be homeless under a bridge. And I've come to this place to look at it is I needed that, because if my gravy train would have kept on barreling down the tracks and I would have kept on making millions and I would have kept doing what I was doing.
Yeah. I
would have kept participating in, those things that humanity shouldn't be doing anymore. I should, and in our business world, we call that, he's so smart and he's savvy and this and that. You know what I did? There's a book called The Diaries of an Economic Hitman. I was part of building infrastructure around the world where there's governments and world banks and private equity and pension funds and all that stuff. And the fancier the tie, I can promise you, the deeper the malfeasance and greed. And so I was part of that system. And so the money I made was blood money.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean I was a bad guy, because I was innocent until I knew.
Sure. Well, and that is.
But once I knew, I had a choice to make.
Are
you going to continue with this? Or are you now going to extract yourself from this? And this was really the universe. It wasn't that I was such a guy with such foresight. The universe stripped me naked until I didn't have a choice.
Well, and that happens if you will slow down long enough to see it. And many of us can tell stories like,
of course,
you've participated in a situation that has helped you to have such a paradigm shift and to move from truly playing small that you talk about in your book to, now you're really playing bigger, right? Because you're seeing so much more beyond what was actually happening. And instead of doing the things that we think as society that we have to tick off our list, you're actually being. And, that's a very profound way to participate in this world. At least from my perspective, it is. And so I love how, when you talked about in your book, you use the quote, "No man is free who is not the master of himself."
Right.
That really, really resonated. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, it's going to be maybe somewhat difficult to hear because you perhaps have a very female audience, but I want to explain this because someone asked me this and I had to do a lot of self-exploration in this. So let me strip back, the masculine archetype a little bit on the shadow side. So a man will get corrupted at 3 different levels, and they kind of go in a hierarchy. So the first level is women, because we abuse and degrade, and misuse our power with women. Mm-hmm. Now, most men don't even ever get there because, they don't have that ability. But once you kind of exhausted that, the next level of corruption, of greed, is money. Mm-hmm. But you get to a certain level of money, which is different for everybody. But at a certain level of money is no longer relevant because you have enough for whatever it is your lifestyle looks like. And this can be, $100,000, $1 million, 10 million, 100 million, or $100 billion. Doesn't matter what level it is. But at some level, you exhaust. And this is what we see at the highest levels of private equity, of financial systems, of CEOs of corporations. It's not about money anymore. They have so much money, they don't know what to do with it. So then they come to the ultimate aphrodisiac of the shadow side of the masculine, and it's power. And it translates itself in abuse of power. Yeah. Now, the masculine in its healthy state, in its actual exalted state, the hierarchy goes the same way, but we don't abuse, degrade, or misuse women. We honor them. We respect them. We respect the differences between men and women, and we respect their innate value they add and contribute to society, to life itself. I mean, this world couldn't exist literally without women. And we actually need women, and we need this harmony between the masculine and feminine, and also between men and women. Doesn't mean that women are going to do the same thing as men or they have the same roles. No, but the source consciousness is the unification of this. This is the Vesica Pisces. Like the harmony comes from coming together. This is the Tahichu. This is the, yin yang. Yeah. It's supposed to be in harmony together.
Yes, I know. And we are not. Right? Yes.
Now, a man in his exalted state, right? He might accumulate quite a bit of abundance, but he will not abuse his money. He will be generous with his funds and his access. Now, power is where the real game is.
Yeah.
Right? Because the right use of power, this is what the world is lacking most on the masculine side. Because for all intents and purposes, as much as women have advanced in politics and business and all that, 95% of the power position in the world are still men. Yeah. And of that 95%, a very, very small sliver of it actually has the spiritual maturity for the right use of power.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. And even to your point with there's more women that have risen to power, but a lot of those women that are in those positions portray masculine energy.
Well, and there's a beautiful
survive that.
Yeah, and I mean, there's such a deep subject here, but
I know. This may be our second podcast.
The reason is because they saw this playing this game that was engineered by men.
Yes, of course.
And they realized that for me, by myself, to be successful in that game, I need to basically go play by their rules.
Correct.
Now, I'm going to say something a little bit controversial.
Okay.
This is the misnomer of feminism.
Yes, I know. And
I'll tell you what, feminism came, when I can show you a picture from World War II where women were recruited to work in factories, and it was like, the arm, I'm powerful too. And this whole feminist movement. Now, the fundamental crux, the misnomer in the feminist movement, and mind you, this is coming from someone that, I think the world of the feminine. But the basic fundamental crux is that it was seeking validation and recognition from the masculine. Mm-hmm. And as long as you're doing that in this feminist movement, you are not sovereign. You are beholden to this man or the masculine acknowledging you, saying you're just as good, just as valuable, just as this and that. Now, the next level beyond that is feminine sovereignty. Now, a sovereign woman says, I don't need your validation. I don't need your acknowledgement because I know my worth.
Yes, exactly.
And I don't need you to tell me I'm worth anything.
Yeah.
Because
I know it here.
I know my worth. I know my true worth. And yes, maybe I can't compete with you, playing tennis or whatever, but I know my worth as a woman is beyond your recognition. Whether you think I'm beautiful, smart, talented, whatever, I'm beyond that because I know what I am. And I know I'm inherently valuable. And every human being really should arrive at this place that I'm inherently valuable just because I take a breath. Just because I woke up this morning, I'm valuable. I am worthy of love, recognition. I'm enough already with all my flaws and all my mistakes and all my screw ups in life. It doesn't matter. Because life is sacred.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And every human being needs to recognize that in themselves, that they are worthy. I'm just gonna do a time check here.
Yeah,
I don't want our conversation to end because there's so many things here that truly this could be another podcast for us to.
Well, let's do another one.
I think
if your audience wants, maybe your audience says, man, this dude from Miami, like Vicky, don't bring him back on because this guy is like loose.
No, I think there's especially when you're talking about that feminism, because I think we have swung the pendulum so far and we've lost sight of the importance of that feminism. And it's not about that recognition. It's about knowing inside of you the value you bring to this world. And I do, this is a lot of the work I do is helping women to recognize, not just women, I work with men too, but a lot of women, helping them to recognize that, because that is the only way we start to have this shift in energy globally, worldly, is starting to recognize that.
And,
so
Robert, not only that, that's the only way women are going to write their own rules.
Correct.
And because, I promise you, there are physiology wise, emotional, intellectual, and I don't mean level of intelligence, but the way we think is different.
Yeah, it is.
Not better or worse. It's different.
It's different.
Right? And so men get initiated by challenges. Women get initiated by nature. When she first has her first menstruation, she is initiated by nature and now lives in the cycles of nature. And her cycles are real. And there are times when she can go full throttle with the best of them. And there's times when she needs to throttle back.
Yeah.
And this is this is not represented in the business world. There's no room
definitely
for this.
Not.
There's no room for any of this. And this is women writing their own rules.
Yes,
and saying, listen, nature governs.
Yeah.
And so the most powerful women that I know that have really truly stepped into their sovereignty, and some of them are powerful alpha women building empires, they will literally program their whole business life around their cycles, knowing when they're in their power and when they need to slow down, when they need to kind of yield and when they can go. And this is beautiful. But this is women writing their own rules. This is basically saying, this playbook that men created, that we need to show up 9 to 5 every week and be total 100% consistency. A man's body is built for that.
Yeah.
A woman's physiology is simply not built for that. And so, now you're being destructive to her system, and you're not actually valuing what's of greatest, because in that moment of power, right? I mean, her creativity is through the roof. Her, non-linear thinking is through the roof. I mean, like her, what she can bring to an organization is of a completely different level. I'll give you one more example and I'll shut up. I had this business in Colombia and I had 2 HR directors. And, when we would hire people, if the male HR director would come into my office, I would, and he would review who he interviewed and the candidates, and he would propose. I would always ask him, who do you think is the best candidate and why? And he would give me all the analysis and the bullet points and all that. When the woman would come into my office, the female HR director, I would always ask her, who do you feel is the best candidate? And she was flawless in her selection when I asked her to feel, because by using the word feel, I'm directing her into her heart, in her feminine intelligence. When I'm asking her to think, I'm directing her into her head, and she gets not lost, but she's not really, that's not how she operates.
Yeah.
The intelligence of her system is through feeling and sensing and intuiting. And that's what I wanted to tap into, because that was a beautiful quality.
That's her power. Yeah.
That's her power. Where
exactly.
if I asked the guy what he felt, he would like feel. Like I didn't feel anything. I just did an analysis. You want to hear my analysis, right?
Yeah.
And so we can also, in our own interactions, in relationships, with my life partner, I don't ask her what she thinks. I ask, if I see something is on her mind, I ask her, what are you feeling right now?
Yeah. No, that's a great distinction. And I think a great way for us to wrap up today. So when our audience is, when you're listening to this, think about how you start to shift that language, even in your communication with, how am I feeling versus how am I thinking? Right. And educating our male allies to why that's important to you, why tapping into that sensory is so important. Robert, okay, this has been fantastic, and we could carry on for a while. How do people find Love and Truth? Where do they find it?
Well, it's on Amazon, and you can, this is the book. This is what it looks like. Love and Truth, and then you put Robert Althuis, and you'll get both my books listed there. My website is robertalthuis.com. I'm on Instagram, Robert Althuis. On Facebook, I think it's Love Plus Truth. I'm on LinkedIn. You can Google my name. There's only one guy with that weird last name. I'm on TikTok these days, so you can find me in many various ways. You can just Google Robert Althuis, and all this stuff will probably pull up. And and if people do choose to read the book, it's 650 pages, but don't be intimidated. You can take all the time you need. And I would love your feedback. There's many ways you can reach out to me, but I'd love your feedback and to see what it means to you. So anyway, into the holidays, it's a beautiful gift also for other people. I can't think of many more things that the world needs today than a little bit more love and a little bit more truth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And that's why I wanted to have you on this episode to talk about that, because timing in the world is so important. Like, we have reached a place that if we don't get to the root of love and truth, we're the road's not going to be nice going forward. So thank you so much, Robert. I am so grateful to you for being here and sharing your story with us. It's been great, just having you channel all that beautiful energy and the way
Can I leave on one note? Because
sure.
I want everybody to know that I am such an optimist. I am so optimistic. So yes, we have a lot of things we need to address, but the only race we're in is to raise human consciousness.
Yeah.
Because at a higher level of consciousness, we have access to a higher level of intelligence, and all solutions for today's problems become self-evident.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I am so optimistic that we are moving there.
Awesome.
No matter how painful it is to watch the process of collective humanity moving there, and there's so much pain and suffering in the world, but it's all a catalyst for something much better to come.
Yeah, much bigger, much better. Yeah, I agree. Awesome. Thank you, Robert. And thank you, audience. Thank you. We're so grateful for you to be here today. And please do share this episode of the WIL Talk podcast. I'm sure there's lots of people in your network that would really benefit from hearing this conversation. So do share, give us a review, let us know what you think. And as Robert said, if you get to read his book, let him know what you think. How did it resonate with you? So thank you again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next WIL Talk podcast. Take care, everyone.